Welcome to at CCLI. I'm Paul Herman, and I'm here today with members of Gateway Worship from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to all of you.
Good to be here.
Could you introduce yourselves and tell us your role there at Gateway?
My name is Mark Harris, and I'm a worship pastor and over the worship ministries at Gateway.
Yeah.
My name is Anna Byrd, and I am a worship leader at Gateway.
And my name is Matthew Harris, and I'm one of our campus worship pastors at Gateway.
Ah, very nice. So Mark, I need to ask you about your time with For Him. I think our viewers will recognize you from that. Tell us about those days.
Those are great days. We met in a group called Truth. And so the four of us were a part of the vocal team in Truth. And so we decided that we wanted to form a 4-member male vocal band.
Yeah.
And so we did that back in the early 90s and released our first album with Benson Records.
Yeah.
And then we toured together for 16 and a half, 17 years. We still are friends. We still every now and then do maybe 1 or 2 different things a year as For Him. But we all felt like that season had ended of touring. And so we decided to step into the next thing that God had for us. And so 3 of us are worship pastors and the other one is an educator. So we're still involved in ministry and love what God's doing there.
Very nice. Well, at Gateway Church, I noticed that one of your elders is Jack Hayford, and it must be amazing to be connected to that kind of worship legacy with Jack. Any thoughts on that?
Pastor Jack is one of my all-time just role models. I mean, as a songwriter, Pastor Jack Hayford has written some amazing songs just with strong theology throughout them. But then even as a pastor, I mean, I go back and listen to all of his messages, especially the ones on worship, because there's just such good foundational theology on what it means to worship, how to lead people into worship, and just what it means to be a man of God, that just having that influence in a worship culture is just something that I'm so thankful for.
His book on worship, Majesty, is amazing.
I've read it, yes.
Yeah. And it's a great book.
And my copy is highlighted quite a bit on quite a few pages. Yeah, it really is amazing.
It's deep. It's one of those things I tell people, when you go to read that book, take some time. Know that it's not a quick read because you need to ponder what he's saying, because what God has given him in revelation about worship and about God's glory and God's majesty is incredible. And at Gateway Church, we have a university there, which is the King's University. Yeah. We moved it about 4.5, 5 years ago to Dallas-Fort Worth from California. It was there. Pastor Jack started it many years ago. And so now the King's University and the main office and the main school location is in Dallas-Fort Worth at Gateway. And it's a part of Pastor Jack's legacy that we've decided to carry forward.
That's great.
So it's awesome.
So you guys have an album release coming up, both in English and in Spanish. Tell us about the vision of the release of the project.
I really felt like I heard the Holy Spirit say, because typically what we would do with different recordings, different projects, is we would record the English version first, and then maybe 8 months to 12 months after that version came out, we would translate it into different languages. And the first language we always translate into is Spanish, because it's very common, even in the DFW market, a lot of Spanish-speaking people. And so I really felt like I heard the Lord say, why don't you do the Spanish and the English at the same time? And so really what we ended up doing is we recorded the Spanish album first, which was unique because we're mostly an English-speaking church, but we felt like if we would give our first fruits to that, God would bless it. And so we recorded Spanish on a Thursday night and English on a Friday night. We have a lot of great Spanish artists, Koalo Zamorano, Lily Goodman, Christine DeClario, Lisa Rivera, Jacobo Ramos, Daniel Calvetti. They go to Gateway Church. Wow. And they're artists in residence, and so their ministries are based there. And so we invited them to, and also a More Mercy band, which Julian is with us here on this trip. He's our MD, but his wife Becky led a song as well. So just incredible talent there and great worship leaders. And so we let them kind of lead the charge, and then the English album kind of followed in the path that they blazed, because they blazed a trail on Thursday night. And so when we showed up to record the album on Friday, there was a lingering presence of God in the building because of what they did the Thursday night.
People were ready.
People were ready.
Yes. Well, tell us about the title track too, if you could, Mark.
The title track is Greater Than. And we went through an interesting season at Gateway. We've really been kind of setting up for the next season of growth. But also during that season, Pastor Robert really went through a major surgery that became a very complicated situation because he literally died on his ranch. Fortunately, there was like a life flight helicopter that came to his ranch, lifted him up out of there and took him straight to an emergency room. So, but his blood, he'd lost about half of his blood after the surgery. And so we spent about a week really praying over him. He got in the hospital. They thought they had it fixed, but then he was still bleeding internally. He almost died again in the hospital. But they lost his pulse several times. And so he's a miracle. And we as a church just really leaned in and prayed that God would spare our pastor's life and give him renewed health and strength. And so the title of the project, Greater Than, is really, in a way, I guess it sums up what we realized, that God is greater than any disease, any sickness, any situation that we face. And if our faith and our hope is in Him, then we really don't have to fear anything that's ahead of us. We can trust in Him and know that He is more than able and more than capable to bring us through any situation or circumstance. And so the title track it's a song, but it's also the title that encompasses where we are as a church to some extent. But just to believe and to know that God is powerful enough. He is sufficient. And if our hope and our trust is in Him, then there's absolutely not one thing, one situation, one circumstance that we face that He isn't able to carry us through and bring us through. And so He's greater. It's like you literally can say, just put any situation that we face, okay? But if you put God in front of it and just put that greater than symbol, He's bigger than that. He's greater than that. He's all sufficient. He's powerful. And we've learned that because we've seen miracles. And we know that God is a miracle working God, that He is sufficient. And so we just kind of thought, okay, God is greater than. Whatever you put after that, just know that God is greater than that.
And your pastor is that living example.
We have the example of Pastor Robert Morris, knowing that, because there were so many different things that had to happen for his life to be saved. But we look at it and we say, no, it was God. God's plan, God's will was to say, once again, I've got you, and I'm great enough and big enough.
Anna, we just heard a song that you sang called Glorious. I'd love to hear you talk about that one.
It's so awesome how the Lord works, because when I was asked to do that song, it was at the end of a pretty intense, hard season in my life. And so I love that song so much because it directs all the attention to the Lord. It's 100% heaven directed. And so I feel like songs like that are so important and so powerful, especially in seasons when you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You may think, okay, God, where are you in this season? Am I gonna be able to make it through? Songs that direct your attention to how good He is, how powerful He is, that He is victorious. You know, it gives you hope to be able to hold on to the end of that. So I thought it was so cool that the Lord kind of placed that song in my lap to kind of celebrate the end of that season and to be able to say, yeah, my God is glorious. He is sovereign and He's gonna have His way. So I was so grateful. I love that song.
And Matt, there's a song that you sing called Deliverance. Tell us about that.
That song is just such an easy song for me to sing because that song's my testimony. I mean, there's a line in that song in the chorus where it says, you called my name. And that's so evident in my life and just how Jesus has worked in me and the Holy Spirit has called me. See, He called my name. He would, in the verses it talks about, He wouldn't let me stay a captive. He couldn't stand to see my chains. And that's what, even in the times that I ran from God and in the times that I wanted nothing to do with it, He called my name. And He couldn't stand to see me just shackled with shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And he called me out of it. So singing that song and getting to the part of the song where we just declared that his love has defeated the enemy, and that I'm not looking back at where it came from because I'm looking at what God has in front of me.
Yeah.
It's so easy to sing. It's so easy to lead other people in, because that's all of our testimonies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just honored to be able to sing.
Powerful. Any final thoughts at all for our worship leaders and worship teams out there in our churches?
Well, just listening to Anna and Matthew talk and just, I'm reminded, sometimes I think when you lead worship, you think, well, I've got to put on this persona or this facade that I've got it all together, that my life is perfect. But I want to encourage worship leaders to know that what people really are looking for is not perfection, is not someone that looks like they have it all together, but what they're looking for is they're looking for something real and something authentic. Because what we always have to remember is there are people out there that we lead into God's presence every weekend, and they walk in with all kinds of stuff attached to their lives. Some people walk in and they've already seen the victory in their life, so they're ready to celebrate because they know that God brought them through whatever struggle they were going through, and so they're on the backside of the struggle. But there are so many people that are on the front side of that struggle, and they're really walking into that building on a Sunday or a weekend, and they're saying, or whatever day it is, and they're saying, man, I'm right in the middle of one of the most difficult times in my life. And what they're looking for is they're looking for something real. And they're wanting to see, hey, are you really going to be authentic? And I think, because it's like the song Deliverance says, they're looking to hear God call their name. They're looking to know if God still loves them. They're looking to us as worship pastors and worship leaders to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, this is where I am. And so I would just encourage anyone that's a worship leader or worship pastor, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to be real. Don't be afraid to kind of let go of the facade and let people see into who you are and be transparent, because when they see that we're a lot like them, it's a whole lot easier for them to go where we want to take them. It's like I always think, I just want to make you feel like if I'm leading worship and you're there, I want you to feel like we're sitting in my living room. I lead in a big sanctuary, so it's 4,000 seats, but I always try to remind myself before I'll step through the door to go onto the platform that my responsibility is to be the real version of Mark, not something that I think they want to see, but something that I know I am and what God has saved me from and what He's brought me from.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we can overcomplicate it. I think we can think that it has to look a certain way or sound a certain way, but it's really just about pleasing the heart of the Father. And sometimes it can look messy, sometimes it's not perfect. And I think about the woman who broke the alabaster jar at the feet of Jesus. It was messy and it looked foolish to others and some people, but she was so centered on Him and so God focused that she just wanted to adore Him, pour out her love on Him. And I think as long as our attention, our adoration is directed in that direction, then the Lord honors that, And so sometimes it doesn't look perfect, but as long as it's pleasing His heart, then I think that for me, that's my main goal.
Some of the best advice I ever have been given as a worship leader was I was leading at Gateway, and one of our campus worship pastors, Pastor Zach Neese, was there that night, and I came off the platform after the service was done, and I asked him, I just wanted to grow as a worship leader, and I asked him, I said, how did I do, or what could I have done better? And what he told me is he said, you're not comfortable. And him saying that made me feel uncomfortable, because I felt like I was comfortable. I was like, how so? How so? And this changed the way I look at a platform, the way I look at worship leading, because what Pastor Zach said to me was, like you said earlier, you're standing in the living room. You're standing in your Father's living room.
Yeah, that's good.
And if you're standing in your living room, it's the most comfortable place you could possibly be.
That's good.
And your Father is standing right behind you, and your job is just to introduce the people that just walked into your living room to your Father who's sitting there. Yeah. And you're the most comfortable you could possibly be. It's easy to just let yourself be yourself because you're standing in your Father's living room. And if we can't be comfortable there, where can we be comfortable?
Wow.
That our Father in heaven is standing right there, the one who loves us unconditionally.
That's so
is the one. So that was one of the greatest things that's ever been told to me, and has really changed the way I lead.
That's awesome.
Powerful stuff. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much, Paul.
Thank you for watching. Take care.